This is a Bergen Film Club podcast.
Like an old movie removed from the frame, I am floating and looking for someone to blame. Won't you project me on the walls of your heart? I'm waiting for the real thing to start.
Hello, welcome to a new episode of The Real Thing. I'm your host, Lawrence. Thank you so much for joining again. This podcast is an extension of Bergen Film Club's program, where we talk about the films included in said program and talk about why they're amazing and why we chose them, blah, blah, blah. You know the story by now. Today, we again have a very wonderful film, and a very wonderful film, actually. So I'm very excited to talk about this. I watched it yesterday. But to talk about that, we have Anna Fredsvik from BFK. Welcome back to the podcast, Anna.
Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah, your last episode was one of my favorites, actually.
Yeah, well, we're sitting outside in the
Yeah,
street.
it was very nice. Now I'm just sitting in rainy, dark Svalbard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm in Oslo.
Yeah, many miles away, but
Yeah.
still together somehow. Yeah. So today we're talking about Girlfriends, which I just want to gush about. So it's a good thing that we have a podcast to have a platform to do that on. But to begin with, let's start with some recommendations. Do you have anything that you want to suggest?
Yes. I've been incredibly bad at seeing new stuff in the last sort of 3 months, which has a very natural explanation, which is that I moved cities about 4 weeks ago. So I think I'm trying to, that's very new, trying to exclude every other new thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been watching a lot of old films, and
Yeah.
I watched very recently Barry Lyndon by Stanley Kubrick for the first time. So I would like to recommend that to the one person who hasn't seen it yet. You should see it now, this week, I guess.
Yep.
Really, really good. Sublime. It's like 3 hours. I guess you could call it like a costume drama. I wasn't bored like for 1 second. It's amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I have any particular TV or film related things to suggest. I am quite excited, and this is not necessarily a recommendation. I'm still in Svalbard, just for continuity's sake. And I met a Peruvian person, and he gave me like a list of films to watch from Peru. So I'm looking forward to watching them. There was one animated one that was made in Soviet Russia about the kind of myth of the indigenous Peruvian people. It's like a 15-minute animation. So I'm excited to watch that. Yeah. But aside from that, being a very busy boy, but I will recommend a podcast that I've been listening to and loving. It's called Finally, a podcast. And it's hosted by Grace Kulenschmidt and Joe Castle-Baker, who are two American comedians who I came across on Instagram. I feel like people have probably seen their videos once or twice, but I think that they are both incredibly funny. It's very up my alley. And their podcast is just them. They pick a topic and they just talk about it, but the topics are very varied. Yeah, the one I just listened to was about curse words, but they've also had episodes about acne, cable TV, Water, I think was one episode.
Right?
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and I like they're both. It's like exactly my type of humor, so I'm getting a lot of joy listening to it. So yeah, finally a podcast that's my little recommendation, and I will try and watch some. But I was thinking, I was like, what can I recommend? But I would just recommend Girlfriends. I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah, but we're going to talk about it, so yeah. Great. So shall we just dive into the film then?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So today we're talking about the Claudia Weil directed film Girlfriends, which was made in 1978. It is an American comedy drama film that is produced and directed by Claudia Weil and written by Vicky Paulon. The film stars Melanie Mayron as Susan Weinblatt, a Jewish photographer who experiences loneliness once her roommate Anne, Anita Skinner, moves out of their apartment in New York City once she gets married. It was the first American independent film to be funded with grants, which was pretty interesting, but private investors helped complete the film because they ran out of money a couple times. So on that note, they started filming November 1975, and it took almost 3 years to complete it because the initial budget of $80,000 ran out quite quickly. But then following that, it got picked up by Warner Bros. And got a full distribution. Yes, that's I just want to like smooth over the plot. I didn't want to go into it too much because I feel like the plot is like quite little in a way, so I don't want to give away too much. Even though this is coming out post screening, I'll keep it on the down low. But you chose this film for the program, so tell me why. Where did you first watch it? Why do you love it?
I honestly don't know how I found out about it. I think maybe I found it on the Sight and Sound like best list. And the reason I chose it is one, it's a comedy, which we usually don't have. We don't have that many comedies on the program usually, so it's good with something lighter. And it's female directed. Also, sometimes struggle with having a balanced program in that regard. And it's also just really charming and very underrated. So
yeah, I'll say.
I'm really happy that it's on the program and that people will get to see it. It's also, on a more personal note, in one of my favorite sort of genres, which is films that center around female friendship. Especially growing up, I consumed a lot of, for example, Sex and the City and Girls when I was a little bit older. So it's a genre that has been really important to me. So because of that, I'm also very surprised that I hadn't heard about it before, because I think that Lena Dunham, for example, made Girls TV series for HBO. She is really inspired by Girlfriends, like the film itself. And it's the same with Frances Ha, which sort of is very similar to Girls in many ways. It's about women in their 20s being directionless in a way, trying to maneuver their professional lives in a big city. So Girlfriends has actually been called the prototype Frances Ha film.
Yeah.
And Noah Baumbach is very expressly inspired by this film. So I'm happy that we're screening it. I'm sad that I didn't watch it sooner. But yeah, I think that a lot of people should see it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, all I can say is like that I'm glad that you put it on the program because I watched it yesterday and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
I thought it was really, really amazing, and I took some notes while I was watching it, but then I forgot to keep doing it because I was so kind of swept up in the movie. But yeah, one of the things I kind of wrote down is that the dialogue is like wicked. It's so, it's like, I don't know. I didn't know how to describe it. And I was wondering if you could not explain my own feelings to me, but like help understand it a bit more. I kept finding myself in moments in the film being like, oh my God, I love this. Wow. This is, but then kind of be like, okay, like pause. I don't know what about it is so amazing. It just kind of is. And it's very like, it's like muted and it's just almost like a real life day playing out in front of you. Yeah, it's slice of life, exactly. But I was just like, I I don't know if it's just many elements altogether that is making it amazing or if it's just the thing itself. But yeah, I just kept being like, oh wow, like so good. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that it is a perfect sort of mix of the script is really like, especially the dialogue, as you said, it's very smart, witty, and pretty quick. But it's also very sometimes it feels like the scenes are improvised.
Yeah.
You know, she actually just started the camera and then she lets the actors just play it out. Then they say something profound or witty, and then they think, oh yeah, that must have been written some way. But it feels really natural, I guess. And I also think that the actress who plays, or the actor who plays Susan, Melanie Mayron, she is just so incredibly charismatic.
Yeah. Oh my God.
With every other person she's on the screen with. Oh yeah, her face is
she has a great face.
Yeah,
she does. There's just something about, I guess, because the film is all about her. I guess now that I think about it, I just think that her performance must be so captivating and good that's like I'm just drawn in the entire movie. But one of my favorite lines I wrote down was so once her roommate moves out after she's completely betrayed by her friend. So she's been like, a lot part of the beginning of the film is once she's sold these 3 photographs, she believes that she's like made it, and her years of grafting are over, and she's going to be like a world famous photographer after selling only 3 photos. And then months go by, and she bumps into her friend, and she tells her friend about it, and her friend says, "Oh, that's great. What are you doing now?" And then Susan says, "Oh, I've got some things cooking. Actually, I have nothing cooking at all." I just thought that's such a great line.
Yeah.
And I guess this is another, like, I guess would really appeal to the Bergen Film Club clientele. Is that a lot of us do have nothing cooking.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's really recognizable that when you meet someone you haven't met in a while and you want to sort of impress them, I guess, or you don't want to let on how meaningless it all is or how little success you have anymore. It goes, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I have a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
I found that's almost kind of touching, a little bit refreshing, that she's just like, you know what? Absolutely nothing is happening. Do you have a job? And then she's like, yeah, you can be my assistant. So that's sort of the thing that helped her out.
Yeah.
A little bit vulnerable and
Yeah. I think one thing I wanted to ask you, because obviously, you know, I'm a human being, I exist, whatever. But I feel like there's only so much that I know that I can connect to these films not being a woman. And you kind of touched on it, said when you like growing up, but like, what's the importance to you to see films and TV like this that's just showing kind of like non-man drama female friendships?
Hmm. So if I can just go a little bit back as well in my formative years, in my teens.
Yes, of course.
I think growing up, especially I was born in the mid-90s. I grew up in the 90s and in the early 2000s. I feel like I mostly consumed media, especially if you think about Disney films, for example, like princess films. The narrative is always that the princess sort of meets the prince, and then the natural end of the narrative is that they are happily ever after or whatever. It's like a romantic arc. So I feel like when I watched, for example, Sex and the City as a young teenager, it was really like I remember thinking I haven't seen like a TV series like this about women who are mainly friends. Like a TV series is about friendship, the friend group. Because that was obviously in my lived experience, like friendship groups, and especially friendships with other girls and other women, is a really huge part of life. And it's at that part of my life, a lot more constant than, for example, romantic relationships. And that's how it has been, when I think about it now, forever. Like, we're still a group of friends who's been friends for 15 years, and partners have come and gone, but still sort of that group. And I can say the same thing, like another thing about especially Sex and the City and girls. They are sort of often talked about in the same breath, or at least the girls I remember were sort of talked about as a millennial Sex and the City. Is that it's about women who are not very likable, or they don't have, or not necessarily very likable, or they are more interested in careers than they are in having children, for example.
Yeah.
Which also was very sort of formative, like, oh yeah, you can actually be not very nice, or do stupid things in a way. And that I don't think I consumed a lot of media that portrayed women in that way when I was that age. And that's also the thing about watching Girlfriends now for me. That is really a nuanced portrait of these women in a way, because it doesn't really demonize neither Susan nor Anne for the choices that they make. Because that's what it's about in a way, for me at least. The fact that they sort of make different choices and chooses to get married. And then at that time, that meant that, or there were certain, you were expected to live a certain kind of life if you got married. So she lives to the suburbs in a huge house. She gets a child. While Susan lives alone in an apartment in New York City. She's lonely, but she has her freedom in a way, but she's struggling economically, etc. Or that it's just about the choice. Like, they're just trying to navigate society's expectations of them as women.
Yeah.
When the film doesn't, like, just lets them be in a way, and both of them, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, definitely. Like, I think that's an important part to say, that it doesn't like demonize, like no one has chosen to do a wrong thing, right? And their feelings are just kind of reactions to not necessarily what the other person has done, but just kind of like what it reflects in themselves. For me, like for Susan, her friend getting married is sort of like her worst nightmare, in the sense of it's probably something that she really wants at the same time. but like it's scary to see someone make such a big decision at a time when you feel like you would be completely incapable of making that decision. So that's kind of like a fear that she's brought up and then kind of projects onto her friend. And in the same way as the film kind of goes on, and I think Anne is shown to be kind of like maybe not so happy with her life, then that's then reflected back onto onto Susan. That she's like, now she has all this freedom and she's like kind of being bitchy about it. And that's annoying because she kind of it's if they want to switch places, but it's also like they couldn't imagine anything worse than switching places.
Yeah, it's true. And they're both kind of jealous of each other.
Yeah.
It seems nice to find the person that you want to marry. And she said Anne suddenly has more money. She can travel, for example. But she has, in a way, traded in her freedom.
Yeah.
And sort of herself as an artist or as an independent person.
Yeah.
While Anne also seems to be jealous of Susan's freedom.
Yeah.
And independence. But it also is obviously a very a lonely, like she's living alone and struggling to get success, etc.
And they're both alone, just in like very different ways.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. It's like nice. Oh, this might be weird to say, but it's like nice to see a reflection of a friendship having like a dip as well, because I feel like that's maybe friendships aren't really discussed in the same way that a relationship would be discussed, but like ultimately they are the same thing. It's just one is romantic, one is platonic.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to feel completely and utterly betrayed by a friend when they get a partner, because at least I felt like this before when I was younger. You're kind of like, who are you? I've known this person for 9 years, like, and now they spend all the time with you. That doesn't seem fair. And so it's kind of like seeing those beats play out. I was like, oh, I've been in this situation before. But it's nice to see that separation and then ultimately kind of a reunion when they both have time to sort of realize themselves as the person that they like might want to be in that exact time. But they're definitely like moments like that can feel like forever. And the most important dramatic thing, but ultimately in like a few months you probably won't think about it anymore. But I think that's what I kind of liked about the film, is that it's sort of almost episodic in the way that each scene is. It's like every scene is a couple months later or a few weeks later. So you kind of do get to see this like real change in people and see that turnover in real time, which is cool. It's like an evolving friendship. And when she's talking about when she talks to her partner, when Susan talks to her partner, that she just got out of a very big relationship. I think that's like a friendship should be discussed like that, because they're just as weighty and important as a romantic relationship.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like I don't want to spoil anything, but I also find the ending very touching.
Yeah.
Say, because they sort of reconcile. Where they're back where they started for a moment. And it's like they are each other's person in a way, even though both of them are romantic partners. They're sort of still very special relationship.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you said, like everyone I think hopefully has that person. And like, just even though like my absolute best friend, I would think like that's the most defining relationship for me in my life, no matter how many romantic relationships I've had. So it's like nice to see that kind of in film. I don't know that I can like necessarily think of so many times that I see that story told.
No, I agree. And I also, especially, I rewatched Girlfriends before talking about it now. And I was thinking about my best friend, Jenny, who,
Shout
yeah,
out.
actually, it feels very similar because we lived together for many years. And we've talked about very recently that, like, I think that she is my actual soulmate. Even though she's married and I am been with my partner for many, many years.
Yeah.
But it's like she is, I couldn't imagine living my life without having her in it.
Yeah.
It's true, yeah. It's very special, and that is when media is so concerned about romantic love in a way. Like romantic relationships. It's very good to see a friendship being valued in the same way in the film.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess especially a female friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it's all about.
I
think I don't think that it's my place to even try and talk about it, because I think that it's not a understandable thing if you don't experience that. It's like very different in my view as a man. It's like the best kind of friendship that there could be.
Yeah, I'd say so, but I also couldn't comment on whether you had the same kind of relationship with your best friend.
Yeah, no, but I think like she absolutely is my soulmate as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've had a lot of ups and downs and a lot of times of just being out of contact with each other for no reason. But it's like ultimately you always come back to that person. She's called Jess, seeing as you shouted out.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. I thought I would talk a little bit about the production. I think it's pretty interesting for me. But actually, just to stop myself in my tracks, we can talk a little bit about the director first. I think. So this is Claudia Weil, or Weil, whatever. She's an American filmmaker, and I guess that she's probably best known for this film.
Yes.
Yeah. So her career began, she was doing a lot of TV directing after she moved to Los Angeles. Yeah, and she directed a couple episodes of like The Twilight Zone, which is pretty cool. Where like makes quite a diverse resume, I guess. And even that she had, which you probably know, that she directed a few episodes of Girls.
Yeah.
As well.
I'm going to go back and rewatch them now.
Yeah.
I know that she has directed them. It's going to be.
Yeah, they must be very special, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So at the start of her career, I think she studied at Harvard. And she made this film, which was a 30-minute film that was funded by the American Film Institute, which I think was like one of the first times that had happened. So she made it as like a short, I guess, or like a long short film. But then she realized that she wanted to explore what would happen like after the fact. So this 30-minute film became the first 30 minutes of the film. That's a lie. Nope. It was the first that 30-minute short film became the first 7 minutes of the film. Yes. Which is punctuated by, I wrote this down, I thought it was just great. When they have a discussion at the beginning of the film, the two female characters, about what color they want to paint the apartment. And then that kind of whole segment is closed off by Susan painting the apartment the color that she wanted to paint it. And I thought that was like just so you immediately knew, just in that kind of, I think there's like some speech over that scene, but you immediately know that she is alone, I think, in that scene.
Yeah.
And all it is her painting the wall red, but you immediately understand like that she's on her own path now and she's no longer a part of this couple, which I just thought was very good filmmaking.
It's also right after we see a montage of all the wedding photos from Anne's wedding. So
Yes.
she's sort of painting over them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. Yes. So that became the first 7 minutes of the film. And so the original funding for the feature film came from the National Endowment for the Arts and New York State Council on the Arts. So it was a total of $80,000 that she was granted. And then at the beginning, the principal photography was effectively 6.5 weeks, but those days were stretched out over a span of a year because the production kept running out of money, basically. When the money ran out from the grant that she got, she had to seek private investors to help complete the film. But once it was finished, like I said, Warner Brothers picked it up and released it and debuted it at Cannes, which is pretty exciting. And also that she was then contracted to make 2 more films with Warner Brothers, which is exactly what she did. Yeah, I think it was that It's My Turn, which I think she won some directing award for as well.
I saw a video of her talking about the film just before we started talking now.
Yeah.
In which she was talking about the main character, Susan. I don't know if you've seen her or this clip where she talks about it.
No.
Because she made a choice about sort of centering not the sort of most beautiful, maybe typical main character as the protagonist, but the sidekick as the protagonist. Because
Yeah.
And I sort of understand what she means by that, in the sense that often when you see a film about a woman, she's very beautiful, at least from Hollywood. And then she maybe has a best friend who is not as beautiful, probably funnier. But she's a sidekick. She's not like the main character, not the one who gets married and sort of etc. But she very strongly wanted to make a film about the friend, because she feels like that's more like her. Yeah. Just interesting, because I guess you can see a lot of similarities between Susan in a way and the director in that sense. Also,
yeah, for sure. And I kind of appreciate that. Just on that exact thing is, I feel like maybe in the past or in even like recent media, if that's the case, if that like that the kind of not traditionally beautiful person is the main character, that's kind of like the shtick of the movie. Like Ella Enchanted, for example.
Yeah.
Her whole thing is that she has big frizzy hair and that makes her ugly. Or like Ugly Betty, for example. But I liked in this film that it was just kind of like not really. It was never like, oh, she has big curly hair and she, etc., etc. It was just kind of like, she's just a person as much as anyone else is a person, and that's just the end, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is funny also because on the extremely legal website that I learned from you that I watched this film on, the description of this was like fat, ugly Jewish Susan navigates her way through New York City, and I was like, okay,
well, beautiful Anne is married.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, so
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's how they describe the film. But I don't necessarily think that I would. I loved it when she got her haircut. I thought that was such a. I loved the scene because she has this kind of like big
Like a
frizzy hair,
curl.
and yeah, and she gets it cut into kind of a very almost closer perm. And the cut of that really made me laugh. I thought that was really like it's just like maybe this will work, and it cuts to this kind of like ugly 80s haircut.
Goofy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that. That was like I said, she just has such a great. I like that's really good. Like something that I guess we can talk about Greta Gerwig a little bit. I think something she's also quite good at is these ways of writing drama with heart and comedy at the same time. Because I think that it should never be one or the other. I think, at least for me, I think comedy has a place in every genre for me. Because for like a horror film, for example, it's not like people stop being people just because there's a demon.
True.
Yeah. So I'm not obviously that's not the case in this film, but like that doesn't need to be high drama all the time and it be unserious because there's comedy. That's just people make jokes and are sarcastic all the time. And I think it's particularly great when you see that in media because that's what makes it feel all the more real for me. Like Fleabag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Which also feels like it feels like it is in the same tradition of films as sort of Girlfriends, Greta Gerwig, up to You Aldrich. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think now that you mentioned the description from this very legal website.
Very legal.
We haven't touched on the fact that Susan is Jewish.
Yes.
It's also like it's something that it's there throughout the film, but it's also very subtle.
Yeah.
Very it's cool. It's an important part of her identity, but it's sort of not the most important part of the film.
Yeah.
And
she is the most defining part of her character.
Yeah, definitely. But it also made me think of when I first watched it and read some articles about it. I saw that it was often compared to Woody Allen, which is because but I think it's a very superficial comparison, but it also makes sense in a way because it's about like a neurotic Jewish artist in the big city in the 70s. But that's about it, I'd say. Like I think that Girlfriends is better than many of Woody Allen's films. Maybe a controversial opinion, but
yeah, I cannot testify because I have not seen any of his films, but I would be happy to say that it's better.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's just while we're talking about it, I think it's very interesting that she, through the while, and this film is more well known, considering how well known Woody Allen is. And like this, it would be something that a lot of Woody Allen fans also would love, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because I mean, from what I understand, having seen none of his films, it's also kind of the slice of life struggling artist kind of in all of his films, I think.
And like with the fast dialogue. Really. Yeah, it is somewhat similar.
Yes. Kind of in the same vein, or at least it drove me to want to talk about it. I thought we could talk about the kind of reception of the film, and then I have some points on the legacy, quote unquote, but I think that we can talk about that a bit better by talking about the films and such that came from this film.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So, as we know, generally very positive. in Variety, it was written that this is a warm, emotional, at times wise picture about friendship, a film deserving of a wide audience. It's documentary filmmaker Claudia Wilde's first picture, although there's no reason to apologetically pigeonhole this movie as a promising first feature. It's the work of a technically skilled and assured director, which is very true. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have a bunch of other quotes that people can go find online because way of tying it all together from the beginning of the episode, I have a quote from Stanley Kubrick about this film. So, in 1980, Stanley Kubrick was being interviewed by Vincent Molina Fox, who asked, "Are you interested in the new paths or trends within the current Hollywood production being tried by people like Francis Ford Coppola, Paul Schrader, Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, or De Palma?" And Stanley Kubrick replied, "I think one of the most interesting Hollywood films, well, not Hollywood, American films that I've seen in a long time is Claudia Wilde's Girlfriends. That film, I thought, was one of the very rare American films that I would compare with serious, intelligent, sensitive writing and filmmaking that you could find in the best directors in Europe. It was not a success, and I don't know why. It should have been. Certainly, I thought it was a wonderful film. It seemed to make no compromise to the inner truth of the story, the theme and everything else. The great problem is that films cost so much now. In America, it's almost impossible to make a good film, which means you have to spend a certain amount of time on it and have good technicians and good actors that aren't very, very expensive. This film that Claudia Wilde did, I think she did it on an amateur basis. She did it shot for shot for about a year, 2 or 3 days a week. Of course, she had a great advantage because she had all the time she needed to think about it, to see what she had done. I thought she made the film extremely well."
Yeah.
Very high praise.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
And very true. I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah. Barry Lyndon director Stanley Kubrick approves. I think that's nice. And I think that's because I feel like we're having kind of like a back cycle-ish to independent film, particularly amongst the SAG-AFTRA writing strike. At the moment, is that kind of independent film is kind of having a resurgence, or it's been having a resurgence, and I feel like now particularly it's being thrown into the limelight. That when the interviewer asks him about those directors, for me that's kind of like the beginning of when American film got incredibly saturated, and it was just like film after film after film, and nothing particularly good was coming out, I guess. And it's seemingly always these like independent small budget things that kind of manage to sneak their way through that are the real representation of life, and often very much better than these big blockbuster films. But speaking of kind of, I guess it's kind of a strange way to talk about her now, but I think one person, as we discussed, who was very inspired, and also her partner, Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach.
Mm-hmm.
It's his birthday today, on day of recording, actually.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, happy birthday, Noah.
Yeah.
They are both very inspired by this film, as you mentioned.
Definitely.
But obviously, Miss Greta Gerwig is incredibly successful now, which is amazing. And she's a far flung away from her roots, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know how, because I was hoping maybe you can talk a bit about this now, because I have not seen Frances Ha, which was her first film, I think, or like first notable one. I've only seen her act in Promising Young Woman. Nope. 20th Century Women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also a notable Mac film, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe.
No, it isn't.
It was good though.
Yeah.
That's also kind of the same. It's like a similar vibe. I think.
Okay.
Yeah. But how does how do you see that influence in their work? Maybe not necessarily Barbie, but maybe Barbie.
Yeah. Okay. So this is going to be controversial. The thing is, I haven't seen Barbie.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yet. I'm going to do
Yes.
it when I feel like I'm moved in. We'll
Okay.
see how it goes.
Yes. Great.
But I certainly can talk about it in regards to Frances Ha. I read somewhere that Girlfriends can sort of be seen as a prototype to Frances Ha.
Yeah.
It feels very inspired by it. And I haven't seen Frances Ha in many years. I saw a couple of, like, the first 25 minutes just before we sat down now. And it feels very similar because that is also about friendship between two women in their 20s. And they live together and they're sort of each other's person. Their friendship is more important than the romantic relationships they have, for example.
Okay.
But then one of the friends moves out and therefore abandoning the other friend. And then she has to find her own way, I guess, which is the same that happens in Girlfriends.
Yeah.
Susan also has to maneuver the loneliness of freedom in a way. Like, you're not dependent, so you have to make your own way. And I think what's similar, especially between like the Susan character and the character that Greta Gerwig is playing in Frances Ha, is that they're both the friend who's left behind, and they both are then, when they're abandoned, like with quotes, they have to suddenly make, because the friend has a really clear plan, it seems like Anne is getting married. I think the friend in Frances Ha, there's some like work-related career. Okay. She has a more serious career than the Frances character. So then they have to, like, both Susan and Frances have to make their own story, their own narrative. And that is what is sort of scary. And they haven't done that. They haven't been actually independent in a way.
Yeah. And like, you have to find out who you are outside of a friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also maybe going the less sort of traditional way as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Susan, for example, she doesn't want to get married. So she has to sort of carve out a career in a difficult, like being an artist, etc. It's not that easy to know how that looks in the 70s, I guess. As being in life, for example. Yeah.
Yeah. They sound very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's actually a couple of people I know's favorite film is Frances Ha. Yeah.
It's cool.
So,
those 25 minutes made me want to rewatch it. Maybe I'll do that after.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I think there's also, like, I don't know, closing idea is with films like this, I think there are times to watch them and times not to watch them. For example, I watched Lady Bird like when it came out. It's a Greta Gerwig directed film. And I was like, this sucks.
What?
And Lady Bird is so annoying. And I like disagreed with everything that she did. And I thought the way that she reacted to everything, I was like, oh my God, why she did, like, nothing made sense to me. And I actually rewatched it quite recently, and I was like, it's like, without being too annoying, it's probably because to me, that's how I recognize that very much in myself. And I was kind of like, that's probably why I thought it was so annoying, because I was like, I am also annoying in the same way.
Yeah.
And Yeah, but like those, I'm probably going to say the same thing anyway. Like it has an impact, I think, on anyone who watches it. And it's films like these that I think the characters are so real that they're so universal that anyone can identify with them. But at the time, I was just like not ready to realize that I was like Lady Bird because I didn't want to be like Lady Bird.
Oh, yeah, because I have the opposite experience of watching that film. I felt very seen in a way,
Yeah.
being like the moody teenager, not having any direction, feeling sort of, I guess, imprisoned in your own upbringing and trying to have a good relationship with your parents, and it just isn't working out. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, but I also think that's it also feels like it is sort of borrowing some things from Girlfriends.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially the character like Lady Bird. She's also trying to find direction in the same way as Susan maybe.
Yeah. But instead of like society being what's controlling her, it's her mum. Yeah.
And like being from a small town.
Yeah. But I think like then I can totally see why Greta Gerwig and Bob Bacard repeating these storylines is because it's just something that could just be picked up forever, and there are so many different aspects and positions and perspectives to look at it from, such as Worst Person in the World, for example. That's a very similar vibe for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
And yeah, like I think I watched that at the perfect point in my life. I think it's just gone through a big breakup, watched it with my ex after we broke up. Okay. And yeah, and I was just like totally destroyed, but in a way it was like, it's kind of just to refer to what I said earlier. The moments can feel like forever, but ultimately it's not. And things change and you change. And just because you don't see the end where you are right now doesn't mean that there's not going to be one. Yeah. Yeah.
That's very nice.
Yeah. Thank you. But I think that we could talk about this for a long time.
Yes. I'm so
but it's truly a great film. And
really,
yeah, this is coming out the day after it screens, I believe. So everyone will be full of whimsy and hopefully not, maybe a little existential dread.
Yeah, just a healthy
just a healthy amount that can drive you to succeed. Yeah. So great choice, and thank you for having it on the program.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to people seeing it. Thank you for having the podcast talking about it.
Yeah, of course.
Great.
I've put both of your films on the podcast list this semester, so I hope that you will come back for your second film.
I'm taking it as a compliment.
No, I'm very excited to see. I was very excited to see Girlfriends. I love the idea of it, and I think the Cremator.
Oh, it's so good. Oh my God. That's a little recommendation on the.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, people need to see the Cremator. Amazing.
Yeah, well they can if they choose to go to Bergen Film Club.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, in that vein, if you are living in Bergen, willing and able, please consider becoming a volunteer. If not, just come to the screenings because we would love to have you. Thank you for being on the podcast. It's been lovely having you again.
Yeah, it's been lovely being here.
Another cozy episode again. Yeah, and you can round out your trifecta with a less cozy one.
More murder in the next one.
Yeah, okay. Well, okay. Thank you again. And goodbye.
Bye.
This has been a Bergen Film Club production. Our music is by Wise John. Check them out on Instagram at WISEJohnOfficial. Our logo is by Pia Sofia Brentersen. This episode was produced, mixed and engineered by Joel Lawrence. Our researchers are Inke Schilbreiben and Mamina Nazmajid. Want to talk to us about films? Then please send us an email at podcast@bergenfilmclub.com. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at TheRealThingPod. Check us out on Letterboxd at BFK The Real Thing. Thank you and goodbye. Listen, follow, leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, or wherever it is that you get your podcasts.